relief, I think, from all that's going around about us. Just a few housekeeping things before I turn it over to Jonathan. First of all, we have some presentations coming up. A week this Sunday, November the 1st at 4 p.m. John Silver will be giving a presentation on opera, death in opera, and very much looking forward to that as well. But there'll be an email coming out shortly about that. And then in November 19th, I believe, on a Thursday night, Dr. Neil Pollack will be talking to us about men's sexual health. And in December, Chris Friedrichs will be talking to us about the Black Death, the plague, rather timely, unfortunately. So that's upcoming. As far as tonight is concerned, you have a little chat button at the bottom if you're on a Mac like I am. Somewhere in your bottom or top of your screen, you have a little chat deal that you can click. If you have a question or a comment for Jonathan as he goes through his presentation tonight, please type it in, and we'll take the questions and comments in order afterwards. If you'd like to read out your own question, we'll allow you to do that. Or David Schwartz, our magician behind the scenes, as always with Zoom, can read it out for you as well. Other than that, please keep yourself muted. I'm about to mute myself. You don't want to hear any more from me, I'm sure, or about my golf game these days. So I am now going to turn it over to Jonathan, and welcome, Jonathan. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
It's a great pleasure. I've been looking forward to doing this. When you were younger, did you like taking things apart to see how they worked, and maybe then trying to put them back together again, sometimes with parts left over or parts that went missing? Well, I did the same thing, but I didn't do it with physical objects. I like doing it with words. My parents tell me that, like a lot of young boys, I was interested in dinosaurs, but I was really interested not in having imaginary battles between them, but in actually learning how to spell their names, the names of the dinosaurs. But I added a wrinkle. I practiced spelling them backwards, and so I've since childhood I've been fascinated by taking words apart, taking our language apart, and seeing how it works. Now, let me see if there we go. Humans, through evolution, have developed the ability to find patterns. We are a pattern-seeking species. And if you think about it, pattern matching is a hallmark of intelligence. It's what allows you as a physician to look at a pattern of symptoms, as a lawyer to look at the facts of a case, the evidence, as an accountant, as a musician, you name it, just about every aspect of human endeavor requires pattern matching. And for my friend Ned, pattern matching and records is a professional area of his as well. Perceiving patterns is pleasing. You think about looking out at ocean waves or at the flames in a log fire, and even unconsciously, you're looking for a pattern. Wordplay is perceiving patterns in words where none were expected. Now, the thing about wordplay is we don't actually know when it started. It's as old as language itself. There were picture puzzles. The Egyptian hieroglyphics are essentially wordplay and word puzzles. If you think about what has now become text speak, we use pictures, we use emojis to do exactly the same thing that the ancient hieroglyphics did as well. In ancient Greek comedy, little bits that have survived, it's full of wordplay. We see mystical word squares. So wordplay goes back as far as you can, as far as we go. Ronald Knox said, man, because this is an old quote, I'll say humans are a puzzle-solving animal, or are puzzle-solving animals. But maybe the nicest way of wrapping all of these things together is in Winston Churchill's famous line, it is a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. And you see we have three words that are all interconnected, and they all have to do with finding answers to puzzles. Now, if you really are interested in wordplay, one of the things you would notice is that Winston Churchill has a very interesting name, because you take it apart and you notice that it comprises the first name and the last name comprise two English words. So that would be something we would call in wordplay, we would call that a charade. We'll talk a lot more about this a little bit later, but you'll never look at his name, I hope, you'll never look at it the same way again without saying, oh, look at that, it's wins and it's ton and it's church and it is ill. Let's think a bit about the puzzle instinct. Marcel Danesi is a professor at University of Toronto and wrote a book called The Puzzle Instinct. He said, why have people from time immemorial been so fascinated by seemingly trivial posers, which nonetheless require substantial time and mental effort to solve, for no apparent reward except the simple satisfaction of solving them? My friend Will Short says, humans are the only animals who create and solve puzzles for the sheer pleasure of it. And there's no obvious genetic reason why we would do this. And let's see if you know the source of this one. For some enigmatic reason, human beings require that things be mysterious. And that is Henry David Thoreau. Now, I'll just give you a couple of examples from classics. So here's a little Greek wordplay, and it comes from Homer's Odyssey. So this is a rather old example. Odysseus gets trapped in the cave of Polyphemus, and Polyphemus is the Cyclops. So he has what we would call 20 vision. You got that one, right? It's just 20 vision. Good, thank you. So Odysseus gets the Cyclops drunk, and he says that his name is Utis, Greek for no man or nobody. So when Odysseus attacks the giant, then Polyphemus calls his fellow giants, calls out for help, and he's saying Utis, which basically is saying, no man is killing me. And so the rest of them say, well, if no man is killing you, then you don't need us because you're not in danger. So there's a little wordplay in the Odyssey. Now, if we did Greek, let's do something that maybe is some Latin. So, but we'll test your Latin ability. The following message was carved into a wooden pillar. Can you interpret it? And this is in the category of classic word puzzles. This is from the very first book of puzzles I ever acquired. And you look at it, and like a magician, I have made you think that it is Latin. It is not Latin, it is English, and all you have to do is string the letters together and put some spaces in, and you'll see what the wooden pillar was for. It was to tie mules to. So that's what the letters tell you. So just because somebody gives you a clue and says, oh, this looks like Latin, think for yourself. Don't jump to conclusions. One more. Is this word play or is this a word puzzle? And the boundary between them is not only is it hazy, but maybe there is no boundary. So not so easy. I'll read this to you. How quickly can you find out what's unusual about this paragraph? It looks so ordinary, you'd think nothing was wrong with it at all. And in fact, nothing is. But it is unusual. Why? Study it, think about it, and you may find out. But you must do it without coaching. I'm not going to assist you in any way. No doubt, if you work at it for a bit, it will dawn on you. Who knows until you try? So, hop to it, try your skill, and pray for luck. Par is about half an hour. Now, I'm not going to wait half an hour to give you the answer, but I'll tell you this was also in one of the very first puzzle books that I had in my collection, and I fell in love with it then, and I've used it and variations of it for many years since. So just put up a thumbs up if you figured out what the unusual aspect of this is. Great, Rebecca's got it. And Irving's got it. Mal and Judy have it. Excellent. So I will put you out of your misery, but before I do, there are clues in lots of unusual places. So read the title, Not So Easy. Now, if you only read it, but you don't say it out loud, you might not get the full impact. Right, Rebecca's still got it. Rebecca's got it. So, not so easy. Not so easy. And then you realize that you get that aha moment. The most commonly occurring letter in printed English in the entire English corpus is the letter E. And this entire paragraph, from the how quickly can you find out what's unusual to the very end, is written without the letter E. That's a type of puzzle called a lipogram. We'll talk about those a little bit later, if we can. So let's give you a little overture, a taste of wordplay. So, are you stressed? Easy. Read the word backwards and you'll find the remedy, which is desserts. Fantastic. Okay, next one. When you, do you have double vision? Look at this wonderful coinage, the word being sub-bookkeeper. And of course, you see the double vision. By that coinage, by putting sub in front of bookkeeper, we now have 4 double letters, 4 pairs of double letters, and they're in a row. It's an amazing word. Look at this one. Look both ways, Dr. Awkward. And you realize by the look both ways that if you read it left to right or right to left, then you've got the same word. So that is what we would call a palindrome. We'll cover all of these things later. This is a really interesting word, triennially, meaning every 3 years. And if you look at the odd letters, the odd numbered letters, so the T-I-N-I-L-Y, it spells tinily, as in a tiny fashion. And the other letters, the even letters, spell renal. It is not easy to find words that divide up that beautifully so that the odd letters spell one word, the even letters spell another. This would be a perfect name for a duplication service. So instead of going to Kinko's, you go to St. Einstein, because you'll notice that it's Stein, that the first 5 letters are repeated as the last 5 letters. Weinstein is so close, but doesn't quite make it, doesn't quite get there. Now, many of us love to travel, but we couldn't this summer, and so we took staycations. Now, staycation is an interesting word because it's actually a combination of 2 words. So that would be stay and vacation. And it seemed to me that that would be a perfect place for us to start our tour of ways that you can look at words with what are called portmanteau words. A portmanteau was a suitcase that had 2 halves and it folded up together to make a single case. And so we find words like chortle, which is a combination of chuckle and snort. One of the earliest, or one of the ones that you probably see most often, and encounter most often in your life, would be brunch. Look at how old these are. 1884, smog, being smoke and fog. Prissy, prim and sissy. Guesstimate goes back almost 100 years. The first use of the word guesstimate as a combination of guess and estimate. Motel being a motor hotel. A boatel is a fairly new word. It's where you park your boat and then go into the inn. So there is such a thing as a boatel as word. Heliport. Well, you know that to be helicopter and airport. But here's an interesting example of how people don't really understand how the language, what the root words and the origin of English words. So we think that it's the heli plus the copter, and that's what makes up the word helicopter. In fact, that's not correct. The word helicopter comes from helico, meaning to spin, and pater, the P-T-E-R, meaning wings. So that's the spinning wings. And if you remember your dinosaurs and the pterodactyl, the pterodactyl, the P-T-E-R, that's the same place as as the ter in helicopter. So we kind of messed up on where the word came from, but we still make nice words out of it. Spork, a spoon and a fork, edutainment, infomercial. There are lots of these. Let me see. Have we got room for one more? Yes. A turducken. That is a triple portmanteau where you put a chicken and a duck in a turkey and you get a heart attack. I mean, you get turducken instead. Tanzania, the country, was a portmanteau of Tanganyika and Zanzibar. Eurasia is Europe and Asia. So we have lots of examples of these kinds of portmanteau words, and we make them all the time. A mocktail. There's another one that we use on a regular basis. Let's turn our attention to anagrams. Anagrams might be the best known ways of playing with words. You rearrange the letters. What does anagram actually mean? It comes from a Greek root meaning reversed letters. Now, we don't actually reverse them. We scramble them. Reversing things we'll do a little bit later. We don't know what the origin of anagrams is. In the ancient world, it was thought that they contained messages from gods. In our generations, when we played vinyl records backwards, we would find the hidden messages. In the old days, we listened to, or we looked at anagrams. About the time of the Renaissance and after, anagrams were no longer considered an occult art, and they became an intellectual recreation, and they've been highly popular ever since. So I'm going to show you some of my favorite classic examples of anagrams. What is beautiful about these is that the word on the left side and the word on the right side are related in meaning. And that technically is what an anagram should be, that the one word is apposite, not opposite, apposite, meaning that it is connected in meaning. So ocean and canoe, those are lovely as a pair. Anger and enraged. This is a beautiful one. The eyes, they see. Now you wonder, how old are these? Some of them go back to the late 1800s. They were discovered, the first discovered. Dormitory is a dirty room. HMS Pinafore, named for a ship. These are just beautiful, beautiful anagrams. Prosecute through me becomes the Supreme Court. And before we started today, David was talking about Chinese food, or I was talking, giving him a little wordplay on Chinese food. And there's a lovely one. The Chinese restaurant is Taste Hunan's Rice there. Great deals, red tag sale. You can see there's just some, I consider this beauty. Beautiful examples of playing with words. There is a famous one that I use in my classroom when I'm trying to get huge groups of undergraduate students to recognize the importance of diversity in study groups that they have. Now, already there's a bit of a contradiction here because universities are going for diversity, and how can you be university and diversity at the same time? But we'll leave that for another time. And so I explained to the students, sometimes in life, you're going to find things that are incomprehensible. And what is the solution to incomprehensible? Things being incomprehensible. So I show them what happens if you rearrange the letters of that long word. And lo and behold, it spells problem in Chinese. And so I say to my students, well, there's the problem. The reason it's incomprehensible is because the problem's in Chinese, so you need Chinese students in your study group. On the other hand, you might say it's only a problem in Chinese, but it's not a problem in English, so you need non-Chinese speakers in the study group too. And they go dancing out of the first, they leave my first class just dancing. They're excited about what beauty you can find in patterns. Haven't even gotten to numbers yet, still only talking about letters. Now, there's a distinction between a transposal and an anagram. A transposal, and it's a technical distinction that we in the world of words and wordplay, we know the distinction, but we've said it's okay for the rest of the world to ignore it. A transposal is simply a rearrangement of the letters, but the rearrangement does not have to have a related meaning. So, for example, Sheraton, I cannot go into a Sheraton hotel or walk past one without noticing that the letters rearranged to spell North Sea. It becomes an occupational hazard for me. I look at names and I find things to do with them. This is one I found. Computer user is Supreme Court. These are beautiful, beautiful transposals. Now, sometimes we're not sure if the meaning is the same or related, opposite, or maybe it's opposite, or maybe it's unclear. So if you look at the word senator and the word treason, is that undecided whether those are related, or are they opposites of one another? Eric Clapton, the guitar god, to some of us, he's a guitar god. To others who don't care for his music, it puts you to sleep. Then Eric Clapton is narcoleptic. Debit card, bad credit. So you get to decide whether these are ambi, meaning unclear, or anti-grams. So we've extended anagrams from ambigrams to antigrams. We've extended anagrams to ambi and antigrams. Here are some examples of some really nice antigrams. Antagonist, not against. And remember, we had dormitory was dirty room, but if you pluralize it, dormitories is tidier rooms. The morning after, in great form then, hardly. The Oscar nomination, it's not a cinema honor. Of course, that only works in the United States. We would spell honor with a U here. Sweltering heat, the winter gales. So you can see a number of examples of antigrams. Here are two real beauties. This anagram is a triple anagram. There could be nothing more beautiful, there could be no more beautiful an example of anagrams than finding three words that are all rearrangements of one another, that spell words that you can put into a sentence that actually has a real meaning. Discounter introduces reductions. And that still stands as one of the most elegant forms or elegant examples of an anagram that's been discovered. How about this one? You decide if this is an ambigram or an antigram. Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. So if you take those, the two provinces with the letter and rearrange the letters, you get two Canadian provinces, lands I dread. So if you can't sleep, get yourself a piece of paper, think up a word, play with the letters, and see what else you can come up with. For example, when Paul Martin really wanted to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, he thought maybe it was his right. Well, anagrammatically, it would have been, because Paul Martin, I discovered, rearranged spelled I, natural PM. So even politically, you can find things to do with anagrams. A little bit of homework for you. There are 3 US states that can, whose names can be rearranged to spell English words. And it turns out there are also 3 Canadian provinces whose names can be rearranged to spell other English words. One of them is variant spelling, a little bit harder to do. So if I'll leave those ones as a bit of homework for you. By the way, if you take the number word 45, spell it out, F-O-R-T-Y, F-I-V-E. How do you get 45 to be something bigger? You rearrange the letters, because rearranging those letters spells over 50. And that is creative math using words. Heteronyms. Hetero, meaning different, but yet they look the same. What does heteronym mean? Well, you've heard of homonyms, which is such a misused word that we've kind of lost what exactly homonym is, but heteronyms we know about. Heteronyms are words that can be pronounced in 2 different ways, and have completely different meanings. So we can buffet things if you're buffeted around by a strong wind, or you could go eat at a buffet. And you say, well, how did this happen? How did we end up with a second word when we already, buffet, when we already had buffet? And the answer is because English is not particularly discriminating. We take words from all other languages, and the entrance requirements are not very strict. And so we got buffet from French and said, fine, that's how they spell it. We're not going to change the spelling. We'll just keep their pronunciation. So you look at a lot of these words, and you can see sometimes you just change the where you put the emphasis. So you can combine things, but if you're a farmer, you're going to use a combine. You can console somebody who is sad, but we're sitting in front of a computer. You could sit in front of an equipment console. Content or content, converse or converse. Is that a coupe or a co-op? Is this something the verb to do and it's does, or is it female deer? It does. Invalid or invalid? And let's just jump ahead a couple. So is this the run right in the middle? Is that a vehicle or is it a sad vehicle? Because it's a moped that moped. You can now you can see where word games and wordplay can come from, little quizzes, where I could tell you that a sad two-wheeled vehicle, and you would come up with moped and moped. Now, one I love to use with kids is the one right below that. So I ask kids who, I go into the schools and do shows on math and language and puzzles and how they all fit together. And I say, how does it feel when you bang your elbow on the edge of a table? What happens to your elbow? So eventually we get to the fact that it feels numb, goes a little bit numb. And I say, right. And what happens when you bang your elbow on the edge of the table, but you do it again, only harder? Now how does it feel? And the answer is, oh, well, now it is number. And you see the smiles on the kids' faces. They've never looked at the word that way. And all of a sudden, there is an interface, an interplay between math and language. You'll see there's a word that's underlined there. This is a great little question. You ask people, how can you tell the difference between a plumber and a chemist? And the answer is you ask them to pronounce this word. So to a plumber, it is unionized, but to a chemist, it is unionized. So perspective is everything. Capitonyms are a subcategory of heteronyms, and you can see from the cap part that the word changes if you change the opening letter from a uppercase to lowercase. So we could have August, the month, or August, meaning important and majestic. So we know the next one, you would say, oh, that's the French artist. But if you spell it with a lowercase d, to degas, it means to remove the gas from. And we have all of these examples. I've given you the pronunciation. You see how they change. So we have job or job, herb or herb, lima, as in Peru, or lima type of bean. You have nestle or nestle. This is a classic in cryptic crosswords to call something nice or niece, Polish or Polish, Rainier or Rainier, and Tangier or Tangier. There's a whole collection of capitonyms of this sort, fun to find. Now, we can take this idea of heteronyms and divide it up a little bit further. So you'll see when we started today, we talked about Winston Churchill and how his names, first and last name, divide up into two chunks. So we can do the same thing here. And it's called a charade because it does remind you of the old game that you used to play, where you divided up the movie title or the book title, whatever it was, into syllables, and you tried to act out what those were. So mustache becomes must ache. Office is off ice. So for a hockey player, they're either on ice or they're off ice, which puts them in their office. Or maybe you could say that for a hockey player, their office is not off ice, it is on ice. And all of a sudden you see where the confusion with the language can come from. So Google becomes go ogle, laugh is L-A-ug, and this is a lovely one. Mount St. Helens actually is mounts the lens if you're a photographer. This one from from Will Shorts. He asks the question, can you think of a phrase that gives you, I can't remember the details or the clues that he gives you, but when you divide it up slightly differently, you get two words that are essentially opposites in meaning. So the Han Dynasty in China becomes handy and nasty as somewhat opposite words. Now, for the legal experts among you, and maybe this one is also for Ned, the statisticians among us, can you think of a single word meaning important that is a charade or a heteronym for a phrase meaning power of attorney? Any thumbs up yet? So think of a word that means important. You might consider your spouse to be important. And what word would you use to describe your spouse? Or what phrase would you use, actually? Two-word phrase. Think of the first word. Have we got any thumbs up yet? It's a long word. 5 more seconds. And here's the answer. Significant. So you might call them your significant other. To the statistician, we talk about being statistically significant. The doctor might call it clinically significant, but the lawyer might call it power of attorney, because if you put spaces and a little punctuation, the word significant becomes sign if I can't. That's power of attorney. Isn't that a beautiful observation about the word significant? In fact, it's something significant about the word significant. Since you did so well on that homework question, can you think of a country name? It's got 9 letters. You can divide it into 3 words, 2 different ways. So I'll let that one germinate for a while, and if you remind me, I'll tell you the answer later. We'll get to it. Now, I love the inconsistency of the English language. So we're going to spend some time looking at what are called false derivatives. False opposites, if you want a fancy name for it, it is a pseudo-antonym. So we think about prefixes that we use to negate things. So when you put dis in front of something, then we think that that will undo the effect. So in, un, de, dis, miss, im, a, non, all of those prefixes tend to negate the original word. And so if English were consistent, and if it hadn't borrowed from so many other languages in the world, well, we wouldn't have these problems. But look at these. What's the opposite of coy? Decoy. Not really. How about fiance? Well, defiance or defiance. Maybe there's some sense there between, or some combination of meaning, defiance and fiance. Fine and define. Jury and injury. That's a really lovely false opposite. I'll pick out some of my favorites. There's trophy and atrophy. Not exactly the opposites the way you would expect them to be. How about a poster and an imposter? Or plus and non-plus, but they're completely different in meaning. So this idea of false opposites can really drive ESL students crazy. I thought if you put a non in front of something or an un in front of something, then it's supposed to make it the opposite. Doesn't actually work. My favorite is sort of a double one. Take the word dated. So you say, oh, that outfit I have, it's dated. Or that archaeological find, we've dated it back to. Well, if you don't know when it started and you don't know the date, then you would say it was undated, which is great. Now, if you wanted to make an opposite of undated, then put in front of it. And now you get inundated, which is a beautiful stepwise false negation. I think this is just the classic illustration, sing and miss sing, which obviously are not related in any way. Now, here's another way we could do false opposites. This is now, if that was the beginner section, this of false opposites, this is the more advanced group. If push is the opposite of pull, and you can see in parentheses what the model is. If push is the opposite of pull, then by using that as a model, then bush should be the opposite of bull. Another example of this, changing the letters, is if a tortoise is another name for a turtle, then change all the T's to P's, and you would say, well, in that case, a porpoise, another name for a porpoise, must be a purple. English is not consistent. In fact, we revel and glory in its inconsistency. How about these? To do and Frodo, right? Frodo from The Hobbit. So how are shot and scold false opposites? Well, hot and cold, put S's in front, and you get shot and scold. Plunder and plover, again, under and over. So we have some really interesting ones like this. How about comet and got? So that's come, C-O-M-E, and go. And you can put a T on either end, or on the end of each of the words, and you get comet and got, which should be opposites. And using that same logic and digging into recent events in the United States, if come is the opposite of go, then Comey, the former FBI head, the opposite of Comey would have been goy, because we take come and go, we put a Y on either end, and we get Comey and goy. The words are there. All you have to do is find them. Now, this is my all-time favorite. If pro and con are opposites, and if English were a consistent language, give the opposites of these words. Progress would be the opposite of Congress. So there's your political observation, and most people would, many people would agree that Congress does seem to be the opposite of progress these days. How about product and conduct? Those would be opposites as well. Province and convince, those should be opposites. Professor and confessor, pro and con. How about this one, protractor and contractor. Well, they mean entirely different things, but not opposites the way you would expect them to. Protestant would be the opposite of contestant. Provocation would be the opposite of convocation. But I saved the best for last. If English were consistent, what would be the false opposite of constitution? And you change the con to pro, and you get prostitution. It's the language is just beautiful. Can you think of two global companies whose names seem to be opposites of one another? One is automotives, one is telecommunications. My money is on Rebecca getting this one. They're short names, but they're well-known company names. And it seems like if we follow the rules of how we negate things in English, those words should be, or those names should be opposites. Anything coming to mind? An automotive company. It's an Asian automotive company. Does that help? I'll give you the enumeration, the number of letters. One of the companies has 3 letters in the name. The other one has 5. Anything dawning on you yet? Oh, I can see Rebecca's thinking. It's really interesting to watch on screen how people think. They go like this, they go like this. It's very interesting. So the company names are Kia, K-I-A, the Korean automobile company, and Nokia. Those should be opposites of one another. You've got Kia and you've got Nokia. False plurals. Again, English is not consistent. If the plural of child is children, then shouldn't the plural of war be warren? You just put the REN on the end of it. If foot goes with feet, then shoot should be pluralized as sheet. Goose and geese would give you choose and cheese. And you can see a number of these. If mouse becomes mice, then this one a lot of people have heard of. Spouse becomes spice. This is rather cute. Cactus, the plural is cacti. So would the plural of minus, changing the US to an I, become mini? That looks rather nice too. If you like a little Shakespeare, if criterion is pluralized to criteria, then portion becomes Portia in the Merchant of Venice. Graffito and graffiti, so if you change the O to an I, then the plural of radio would be another math term, radii. So a lot of them are rather nice. Oh, this one is obscure, not obscure, but a little more challenging. So one way of pluralizing is to put the IM on the end. It isn't obscure to us as Jews. We understand how we pluralize. In fact, English has borrowed that way of pluralizing. Cherubim and seraphim. But if this were consistent, then the plural of inter would be interim, and the plural of den would be denim. So English, it's a beautiful language. You could also have phonetic plurals. So what's the plural of lay? Lays. What's the plural of bach? Box. How about walt? Waltz, or gray and grays. So this says that you don't just need to look at the words, you can listen to them as well. Now, metathesis. Oh, it sounds like a medical condition. It actually, in linguistics, means the rearrangements of sounds or syllables in words or in a sentence. So when kids get mixed up saying spaghetti and it comes out as paschetti, or adults who should know better say nuclear instead of nuclear, that would be a metathesis. It even explains how the word 13 came about, because it came from 3-teen. So it's a little change in how the pronunciation worked. So metatheses, here's a number of examples. We're not just changing the spellings to make them Canadian versus American. So like theater, R-E or E-R, they really need to change meanings as well. So converse and conserve, reverse and reserve. What was the example of the rider who rode his horse backwards to warn that the British were coming? His name was Paul Reverse. So you can come up with one-liners like that. Customer, costumer. One of the examples I use in my classroom is that I teach about causal relationships. But if you type in causal with a little metathesis, then it comes out as casual. And I tell my students, I can teach you about causal relationships. Casual relationships, you're on your own for those. I'm not taking responsibility for casual relationships. If I were to start an ice cream company, a gelato company, I would call it legato gelato. So connected, smooth, and all that is metathesis, changing things. So it's a lovely example. By the way, if you looked at the word oompas, like in an oompa oompa band, and you switch 2 letters and spell it backwards, it tells you it becomes shampoo. So whatever you can do forwards, you can also do backwards. This brings us to Spoonerisms. Now, Spoonerisms have an interesting history. The Spoonerism is sort of that slip of the tongue. There's actually a technical term for a slip of the tongue. It's called a parapraxis. So if you wanted a really fancy name for it, a parapraxis. Another way of saying it is a lapsus linguae. So a lapsus, a slip of the tongue. Now, the Reverend William Archibald Spooner was the warden of New College in Oxford from 1903 to 1924. And he was, there's a whole mythology that's grown up around him, that he tended to mix up the starting sounds of phrases, 2 words in a phrase. For example, "Marden me, Padam, but you are occupying the wrong pie." So, "Pardon me, madam, you are occupying the wrong pew." "May I show you to another sheet?" "May I show you to another seat?" "I have in my bosom a half-warmed fish." No, a half-formed wish. "It is customary to cuss the bride." It's customary to kiss the bride. And he referred to our queer old dean, which of course is our queer old dean. Now, it turns out that he didn't actually say any of these, that you just get wrongly attributed to him. Very few of them he did actually say. One he did say, it's been documented, verified: "The weight of wages will press hard upon the employer." So it's the rate of wages. But there is a story about him that's my favorite, about how he mixed things up. He was seen at a dinner party pouring red wine, 1 drop at a time, over the salt that he had spilled on the tablecloth, because he knew, or he thought, you're supposed to put wine on the salt. He kind of got it mixed up. He should have put the salt on the wine, but that's not how he did it. So let me show you some of the best Spoonerisms that I know. "Crushing blow, blushing crow. Easy chair, cheesy air. Salary cap, calorie sap. Coast guard, ghost card. Lobster moose, mobster loose." These are very nice. "Flutterby and butterfly, sheer gift. Gear shift. Live in," if you say that carefully, it's villain. "A lot on your knife, not in your life." You could rake over the coals. I would prefer cake over the rolls. Now, what happens if you go into classics? Can you think of a Shakespeare play that would be a nice a Shakespeare play title that would give you a nice Spoonerism? So if I give you the characters, then you'll get it. So Kate and Petruchio. And now you realize that it would be the shaming of the true, which would be a nice Spoonerism of taming of the shrew. A more obscure one would be, instead of a winter's tale, a tinter's wail. So that would work too. It's just not as well known. When I was a kid, I learned this phrase, or this sentence. Let's see if I can get it right. "I'm not under the affluence of alcohol as many thinkle peep I am. It just shows to go you how foolish you can fool when your tang is tangled and your merd's wixt." So that's been indelibly etched in my memory, and that's a whole string of Spoonerisms. It's an acquired taste, but it's like a lot of things, it's worth acquiring. Intentional Spoonerisms lead to puns, just in case you were wondering what they might be good for. Rotten lettuce makes a bad salad, but a depressing song is a sad ballad, right? So one-liners of that source. I could give a whole lecture in a loud voice on these, but that would be a course of a different holler. Oh, Rebecca's got one of the 3 Canadian provinces that can be an anagram. Excellent. You got my favorite one. What's a palindrome? A palindrome is a word or a phrase that spells the same forwards or backwards. There are some short ones. They're like noon. There could be a phrase like a toyota, or the sex of foxes, which spells the same both ways. Madam, I'm Adam is one of the most famous as a sentence. There are not very many common words that are palindromes, and I've given you a nice list here, and you can see most of them are really short. There's a few that get to 7 letters in length. Deified might be my favorite one of those. The longest relatively common word that's a palindrome is redivider, but you might say, that's a cheap word. Well, it's a word. You can use it. You can play it in Scrabble. And if you have a divider and you want to use it again, it's a redivider. As a statistician, of course, my favorite palindrome would simply be stats. So you get statistics coming and going that way. Malayalam is one of the longer ones. It's a language of southern India. And this one is considered probably the longest one. Kinnick kinnick is a mixture of dried leaves and bark of certain plants that can be smoked. Can we think of other palindromes, Canadian palindromes? Sure. Think of a city and university by the same name in Quebec. It's a palindrome. And that would be Laval. So Lauren has changed Manitoba into Maine boat, but it has to be a single word. And for those of you who are still working on it, Rebecca, oh, you've already seen, Nova Scotia is avocations. That's a beautiful one. Avocations, a synonym for hobbies. How about the mythical creature in the Okanagan, the Ogopogo? Well, maybe not mythical, but the Ogopogo is also a palindrome. Here are some classic palindromes. This one is probably considered the best of all time, or best known of all time. A man, a plan, a canal, Panama. And backwards and forwards tells you the same thing. Now, there are some wordplay people who have extended that. And you can see that if you have a good idea, then there are many more words that you can add. So now it stops making a whole lot of sense. A man, a plan, a cat, a ham, a yak, a yam, a hat, a canal, Panama. You sort of lose the thread. And let's see, Paul has just typed into the chat what was going to be the next classic one, Napoleon's Lament. Able was I, ere I saw Elba. This is the Owl's Complaint, too hot to hoot, which is rather nice. And how about we're back to the Chinese restaurant. The Decision, wonton, not now, which is a nice one. These are more of the classic palindromes that we would see. Let's move on from, I can't leave without palindromes without showing these two math palindromes. I prefer pi, never odd or even, and both of those are beautiful. Backwards, forwards, the same. Now, here's a coinage. Here's a word that you probably have never heard. A subordinalap. What's a subordinalap? Well, read it backwards. Palindromes. So a subordinalap is a word that when you spell it backwards gives you a different word. The less interesting sounding term for that would be a reversal. And these are examples of subordinalaps or reversals, words that spell other words when they go backwards. So stink, I'll work from the big ones. Stinker and re-knits, deliver and reviled. One that is extremely well known is if you are not particularly good at playing golf, spell golf backwards, and it's what you do with the ball. You tend to flog the golf ball. Homophones. Homophones are the technical term for what you might know as homonyms. So these are words that sound the same, but are spelled, two words that are sound the same, but are spelled differently. So night and night, you could drop the first letter. You could drop the last letter. You could drop an internal letter. These all sound the same. Coral and coral, morning and morning, horse and horse. You could rearrange the letters and you'll still get words that sound the same. So steak and steak, break and break. All we've done is rearrange things, but we still ended up with homophones. This is a lovely one. Sense, sense, sense. But I want you to focus on this word scent, C-E-N-T. Which is the, what happens if you drop the S? It's still scent. What happens if you instead drop the C? It is still scent. So we have three words that sound the same, whether you have the first letter taken off or the second letter taken out, or leave them both in. And so there is kind of an existential question about this. In the word scent, S-C-E-N-T, which is the silent letter? It's an open question. Could be either. There are quadruple homophones. Look at these. There are 4 different spellings of carat. So carat, if you're talking about diamonds, carat, the diacritical mark, the little triangle over a symbol, carrot that you eat, or carrot for gold, spelled with a K. Now, redundancies are one of my favorite favorite areas, favorite collections of wordplay. I always thought there should be a government department. It was called the Department of Redundancy Department, and that would be just a lovely example of bureaucracy. So why are these redundancies? Well, how many times have you said these phrases or words and not really thought about the fact that they are the same aspect said twice? So over-exaggerate. Doesn't exaggerate already mean to overdo something? You don't have to over-exaggerate. A time clock. What other clocks are there? Too excessive. A he-man. There are not a lot of, well, let's not go there. Manual dexterity. What does dexterous mean? It means you're good with your hands. What does manual mean? Having to do with your hands. So if you have manual dexterity, it's you're redundant. Bare naked. There are not that many other ways to be naked except by being bare. Aquamarine. Yeah, I know it's a color, but aqua means water and marine means water. So it's a redundancy. Bits and pieces, each and every. I like this one, a hot water heater. Well, okay, if it's a heater, it's going to make the water hot. It's so that's what we could just call it, a water heater. Oh, he's gone away. You mean he's gone or he's away. You don't have to say that he is gone away. At the risk of picking on a local politician, it drove me crazy when Adrian Dix would say, we have to be, with respect to the pandemic, we have to be 100% all in. And I think, well, if you're all in, that to me is 100%. 100%, then you're all in. Why do you have to be both? That's even worse than athletes who give 110%. Past experience. It's a little tough to have future experience. It hasn't happened yet. To pick and choose. Well, they mean the same thing. Skin rash. Where else are you going to get a rash? You can only get it on your skin. Rules and regulations. Up above. Where is the up? It's above. I rather like this one. A scheduled appointment. Oh, I have a scheduled appointment. Well, if you have an appointment, it is scheduled. You don't need to say this. And just think of how much tighter your writing and your speech will be if you took out all redundancies. I often tell my class, I ask them a question, do you know what the #1 principle of teaching is? The #1 principle of teaching is repetition. Let me tell you that again. The #1 principle of teaching is repetition. And I wait until I've got the entire class laughing. Sometimes I have to say it 3 times, but eventually they get it. How about mutual cooperation? Mutual cooperation. Well, if you're cooperating, it better be mutual. Otherwise, it doesn't quite work. And he's a personal friend. Another beautiful redundancy. Sahara Desert is actually a redundancy because Sahara means desert. Lake Nyassa in Africa. Nyassa means lake. Same with Kalahari Desert. Kalahari means a waterless place. How about Lake Tahoe? You probably haven't thought about this, but Tahoe comes from a Native American word that means lake. So Lake Tahoe is actually lake. The same with the La Brea tar pits, because La Brea in Spanish is the tar. So we have the tar pits. How about the Milky Way Galaxy? The word galaxy comes from Greek galactic, which is where you get lactose, lactic, anything to do with milk. That's why it's called the Milky Way. So a galaxy already has Milky built into it. So it's the Milky Way or it's the galaxy. You don't have to call it the Milky Way Galaxy. There's a major street in Toronto, North-South Street. You've probably, if you've been to Toronto, you've probably gone down it. It's called Avenue Road. It's a beautiful redundancy. Which is it? Is it an avenue or is it a road? And which, this is a linking my talk to Hillel Goldman's talk on baseball, which Major League Baseball team has a name that's redundant? So Ned, this one's for you. Which Major League Baseball team has a redundant name? You're muted, so can't hear. It would be the Los Angeles Angels, because what does Los Angeles mean? The Angels.
That's not a real baseball team.
The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim would be the Angels. So there's a beautiful double redundancy. Oxymoron. The plural, by the way, is oxymora. These are contradictions. So rather than redundancies, we have words that are opposites of one another, and yet we don't think very much. We don't think about them. To act natural. Well, if you're acting, then it isn't natural. Athletic scholarship. That one is maybe we'll leave that one. Awfully good, or we'll go ahead to the end. Awfully good goes along with pretty ugly. Which is it, pretty or ugly? An elevated subway. Really? A down escalator. To escalate means to go up. By the way, what do you call an escalator that's broken? Stairs. How about the final draft? If it's a draft, it's not final. Fresh frozen. Full of holes. Graduate student. That's a really good one. A graduate student. Well, if you're a graduate, but you're a student, so did you graduate or not? Old news, open secret. There's some really lovely ones. And sometimes you have to think about them to realize that they're opposites. A paid volunteer. That was what the program that the federal government and we were going to do. They were going to pay volunteers, which sort of takes the teeth out of volunteering. Science fiction. Is it science or is it fiction? A thunderous silence. But that reminds me of another piece of wordplay. When you hear thunder, we say it is thundering. What if there's lightning? What do you say? Is it lightninging? So English doesn't work that way. Oh, Rebecca liked that one. Good. Excellent. A sure bet. Closet claustrophobic. I quite like that one. By reason of insanity. Okay. A baby grand. Ballpoint. Many fewer. A non-working mother. No such thing. Press release. Someone. That's a lovely little word that is actually an oxymoron. Is it some or is it one? Speech writing, which is also great because it's either speech or it's writing. It's hard to be both at the same time. Student teacher. And these two need a little bit of thought before you realize wholesome. Is it whole or is it only some? And there's a beautiful oxymoron. And monopoly is a fascinating word because it is two prefixes that are glued together. They're opposites, and yet they make the word. So is it mono, meaning one, or is it poly, meaning many? And that's what a monopoly is. Beautiful, beautiful set of words. Here's a few others. Think of the word sophomore. This is a little more advanced. Sophos means wise, and the more comes from moron. So a sophomore is a wise fool. So when you're a sophomore at university, you're not a freshman. You've learned a little bit, but you're still a little bit foolish. You haven't learned that much yet. Still waters run deep. Well, if they're still, how can they run? So how many times have you said that or read that? My favorite idiom is every now and then, which means once in a while, but not if you take the words apart, because every now and then would mean if it's every now and it's every then, that should mean all the time. And yet every now and then means the opposite. How about Mediterranean Sea? You know what Mediterranean means? Middle of the land. So now you have middle of the land sea. And the one I like most about in this category is the Santa Monica Synagogue, because now we have a synagogue that's named after a saint. So that's just a lovely oxymoron. A triple oxymoron is permanent guest host. So when Jay Leno was the permanent guest host, first of all, a guest host is an oxymoron because you're either host or you're a guest. But if you're permanent, then it makes it even worse. And for the statistician, random order. That's a great oxymoron. Standard deviation. Well, either you're standard or you're deviating. How can it be both? Even odds. Or in programming, advanced basic. That's a lovely one as well. I don't want to take.
You missed jumbo shrimp.
Jumbo shrimp is one of the most famous ones. Malapropism. So mal apropos is where this comes from French, meaning not appropriate. And there was a character named Mrs. Malaprop in Richard Sheridan's 1775 comedy called The Rivals. And so the character, this linguistic maladroitness, comes from her name. I have a little quote here from her. Mrs. Malaprop took special pride in her use of the King's English. Sure, if I reprehend anything in this world, it is the use of oracular tongue and a nice derangement of epitaphs. Her niece is as headstrong as an allegory on the banks of the Nile. So using slightly wrong words, thinking they're the right ones, malapropisms. So here are a few. He's a wealthy typhoon. The marriage was consummated at the altar. That would be a sight to see. It's a nice momentum of the occasion. The specialists charge exuberant fees. My husband is a marvelous lover. He knows all my erroneous zones. That skinny dog looks emancipated. And it's so close to being the right word, and yet not. I strain my abominable muscles in the gym. Well, maybe that's actually true. I have an amusing antidote to tell you. When it comes to marriage, I believe in monotony. During inspection, he didn't pass mustard. So those are what are called malapropisms. Certain US presidents maybe have said one or two of these or a million of them over time. Mondegreens. Now, mondegreens is a word you maybe haven't heard. A mondegreen is when you mishear the lyrics to a song. And it comes from the Scottish ballad, O the Bonny Earl of Moray. Ye Highlands and ye Lowlands, O where hae you been? Thou hae slayed the Earl of Moray and Lady Mondegreen. So when a young woman heard this Scottish ballad, she didn't hear the words and laid him on the green. She thought that Lady Mondegreen had met a grisly end. So a mondegreen is a misheard song lyric. Now, with the internet, we don't make mistakes with song lyrics as we used to because we can look them up if we think to look them up. But think back to songs that you learned through your youth and all through your life. And did you actually hear them the way the lyricist had intended? Let's look at a few, before songs, a few others. According to the Lord's Prayer, God's name is Harold Wishart. Our Father Wishart in heaven, herald be thy name. Right, so that becomes another name of God, which maybe we don't think about. There's a traditional hymn about a bear with vision problems, Gladly the Cross-Eyed Bear. So that's the Christian, gladly the cross I would bear. And the Americans concerned about the sight lines of a man with a Latino name in the Star-Spangled Banner would be Jose, can you see? So I'm going to take a crack at singing you a line or a misheard line from some popular songs. Some of them I'll sing, some of them I'll just tell you. In Elvis Presley's Suspicious Minds, so it starts off, caught in a trap. But I never heard it that way when I first heard the song. I thought it was, they call him a tramp. So that was my my mondegreen. Creedence Clearwater's Bad Moon Rising. There's a bathroom on the right instead of there's a bad moon on the rise. Excuse me while I kiss this guy. That's Jimi Hendrix, Excuse Me While I Kiss the Sky. Now there's the line from Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. The girl with colitis goes by. Not the kaleidoscope eyes. Maria Moldauer's Midnight After You're Wasted, rather than Midnight at the Oasis. And Randy Bachman, who hosts Vinyl Tap on CBC, said that one of his favorite mondegreens was the reworking of Taking Care of Business, which came out as Baking Carrot Biscuits, as misheard lyrics. Crystal Gale's Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue came out as Donuts Make My Brown Eyes Blue. And a song from, I can't remember, early 70s, Marilee Rush, who did the song called Angel of the Morning. And I'll tell you what the original is after I tell you the mondegreen. Just brush my teeth before you leave me, baby. It was just touch my cheek before you leave me, baby. So when you mishear lyrics, you now know what mondegreens are. A little bit of pandemic wordplay, since we are in a pandemic. If you look up the word corvid, you'll discover that it's a technical term for crow. So I've been talking about the inconsistency of the English language. So if corvid and crow are related, then just take out the R from the two words, which would mean that COVID should be another word for cow, if English were consistent. Pandemic is an anagram. Let's see what kind of anagram. It's a medic nap. So were the doctors asleep at the switch or not? Or were they taking a nap? Pandemic. It's also viral. Now look at the word virtual. So to, the informal U in French, if you stick that in the word viral, you get virtual. So the fact that we're talking about living our lives virtually because of things being viral, you can see that that's a natural connection. Now this is a beautiful find. I was one of the first people to notice this in the National Puzzlers League, where I'm an active member. A few others also discovered this. The coronavirus might actually have been God's way of saying we should all be vegetarians. Why? Because it's possible that the coronavirus came from eating sketchy meat. And if you rearrange the letters of coronavirus, it spells carnivorous, which is just a fantastic anagram. If you put the people in a panic, what's the Greek word for people? Dem, as in democrat, democracy, demos. Then you put the people in a panic and you get a pandemic. If you and a friend record and post moving images on Instagram, would that be called a co-video? Ah, that's quite a nice one. And this is my favorite. This is my all-time favorite. Well, all-time so far. What would René Descartes have said about life in the current pandemic? So now let's test out your Latin. Here we go. Covido ergo Zoom. That is as elegant as we will find. Now, I don't want to overstay my welcome. Do we have a few more minutes? David, Larry, how many? Few more minutes? Yeah, we're good. Everybody's happy. You're learning. You're still smiling. Good. What I wanted to do was give you just a little taste of word puzzles rather than word play. Now, word puzzles are much harder to do in a virtual environment like this, where you're all muted and we don't have time to think or type or work together to solve the puzzles. But it'll give you a little flavor of word puzzles, and then I'll tell you a little bit about where, if you like these, you might be able to find them in the new year. When people hear the phrase word puzzle, they think crossword puzzles? And the answer is no. Crossword puzzles are one big area of word puzzles, but anything to do with playing with words is a puzzle. Surprisingly, we don't know very much about, and not much has been written about, how to actually solve a puzzle. We don't, it's not been a huge area of intellectual investigation, especially from a psychology perspective or physiology, analytic perspective. Now, I want you to know that you can learn to solve puzzles, just as you can learn to play tennis or play the piano or play bridge, but you can't learn how to play golf. That's another story altogether. That's just hopeless. So how do you solve a puzzle? Well, here's a 3-step method from a statistical genius, not Ned or me, another one, John Tukey. He had a 3-step problem, and this was a 3-step problem-solving method described by a colleague of his at Princeton. First, he would listen very carefully to the problem, asking questions when necessary to clarify the issues in his own mind. Step 2, he would sit quietly for however long it took and think very hard. Step 3, he would give you the answer. Now, that's what a genius can do. It's a little harder when you're not John Tukey. So I thought I would give you a second approach and some little bits of tips on how do you solve puzzles of all kinds in life, because life really is a puzzle. First of all, make sure you hear the instructions carefully. You read them carefully. If you're hearing the puzzle orally, so out loud, make sure you heard it correctly. For example, if I said to you, can you think of the name of a country, an independent country in the world, and remove one S and get the name of another country? And this is a tricky question that tests your ability to listen to the instructions. So I'll tell you again what the question is. Take the name of a country, remove one S, and get the name of another country. Now, would anybody like to unmute themselves if they're allowed to, and say back to me what the question was?
So, if you remove one letter from a country, you'll get the name of another country, and I think the answer is Siberia.
No, you didn't hear exactly what I said. Anybody else want to try it? So I said that you take the name of a country, remove one S, and you get the name of another country. And the close listening that you're supposed to do is that I said remove one S. How do you spell one? O-N-E. So if you're going to remove one S, you have to remove the letters O-N-E-S. And if you start with Indonesia and you remove O-N-E-S, you get India. And it's a classic example of how people do not listen carefully to what the question is. They interpolate, they hear parts of it, they think they know what's being asked, but you do have to check that you actually heard the puzzle correctly. Irving is probably the only one on screen who I would trust to say, or I would trust with, he knows how to listen and ask whether or not he's got the question properly phrased. Attention to detail. Give it the once over twice. So does it seem easy or hard on first reading? Don't just sit there. Try something. Write something down. You need to find a crack in the puzzle. As Leonard Cohen says, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Don't give up. Puzzles are created for the express purpose of being solved. There's nothing worse than us as puzzle constructors making a puzzle that nobody can solve. They say it's easy to make a hard puzzle. It's hard to make an easy puzzle that's also satisfying. So we want, unlike most games, we want you to get the answer. Open your toolbox. Are you looking at numbers? Are you looking at patterns of letters? Is it phonetic? Are you looking at what's there or what's missing? Be systematic and efficient. Use the force. See if you can simplify the question, which is what we do in math. Sleep on it. Have you ever gone to sleep, gone to bed, stuck on the answer, or stuck on a problem, and you wake up either at 3 in the morning or when you're supposed to get up in the morning, and you say, oh, I see the answer. That was obvious. You slept on it. You changed tracks. You came back with a refreshed brain. It's okay to get help. We have almost infinite resources now to get help in solving puzzles. So ask Google or Siri or Alexa or anybody else that you need. Use the apps. And if you get completely stuck, look up the answer, because when you see the answer, you go, aha, that was an interesting, you'll still get a little bit of fulfillment from it that way. And it'll help you with the next puzzle that you might have. In short, practice, persevere, and as was written in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, don't panic. And so I'm just going to, for about 5 minutes, give you examples of word puzzles that are not the crossword puzzle type, but ones you could play with. So if you saw a string of 6 letters, these are the initial letters of a word, can you find the well-known phrase that it represents? And sometimes they just pop into your head, and other times you'll stare at them and it'll never occur to you. So we'll hope that some of these pop into your head. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. How about this one? This might be a little bit easier because it's got a comma in there. And this one would be, Rebecca, you got it. Excellent. Ontario for oration. Out of sight, out of mind. How about this one? Think Shakespeare, and you get it. To be or not to be. So you can take phrases, proverbs of this sort, and just give the initials and make a game out of it. Of course, you could also do it from the end. So how about if you were only given the last letters? And how would you break into a puzzle like this? Well, there's a U. That means that you need a word that ends in U. Can you think of a word that ends in U, a very common word that ends in U? I just gave you the answer. U. Exactly. Y-O-U. So this would be look before you leap. So breaking into it by looking at unusual patterns that way. Here I can give you the number of letters rather than the actual initial letters. So the enumeration is 2 letters, 2 letters, 2 letters, 3, 2, 2. And now this tests how good your memory is and whether you were paying attention to the previous question. Because we just saw the answer to this one. This was to be or not to be, which was on the previous page. You see, for those who can't remember history, you're doomed to not even repeat it. Sometimes you can be given some of the smaller words. So what does that proverb say? And it's appropriate for what we're doing. The pen is mightier than the sword. An L, a G, H in the M. I have books, whole collections of these. Never look a gift horse in the mouth. Okay, let's look at a couple of others. Have you ever noticed that the word network has the number 2 in front of it, or embedded in it, T-W-O? So in certain kinds of cryptic crossword puzzles, you might see the word network, but it's spelled N-E, and then the numeral 2, and then R-K. So that's how you see this kind of work, or you see this kind of abbreviation when you're using text language, textese. So we use shortcuts. That too is called a nucleus or a string. So if I give you a 3-letter or more nucleus, can you find a word that has that string in it? No letters in between, but it's got that 3-letter group between. And the trick here is to figure out these are probably all going to be compound words, and you have to decide where to split it. And so this would be easy going. Now what's neat about this is it's really the only common word that you'll find that in. Here's another one that is unique, almost unique. I shouldn't say almost unique. There's only one common word plus all of its inflections and an uncommon word. And you would think, how hard is it to find a word that has U, F, and A all in a row in that word? Anything pop into your head? Well, let's see if we can manufacture an answer. Oh, we can manufacture an answer. There it is, manufacture. It's unique as a word. So is this string. There is only one word in English that has GNT in a row in it. And you'll actually find it in the English translations in your Siddur or Machzor. We talk about God's sovereignty. It is the only word that has GNT in it. Now, this game was called by lots of people have used it. Lewis Carroll played it. He called it mishmash. He would come up with unusual ones. You would think UIA, which in my Jewish communal experience is United Israel Appeal, but there's only one common English word that has UIA. And that is colloquial. So you start looking at words in a completely different way. How about you do? That would be fraudulent. I have, you want more of these? Just write to me. I got a large collection. What do the following common abbreviations have in common, aside from the fact that they are common abbreviations? Now, we as data analysts will say, if you can only see one way to analyze the data, you're probably not looking at it the right way. You probably have the wrong answer. So think about the idea of subordinal lapse, reversals, and look what happens with each of these. So big man on campus, cash on delivery, all of these, if you read them backwards, each one is a common word. So it's, again, a beautiful observation. By the way, there's a politically incorrect joke that I'm still going to tell you it. Do you know what DNA stands for? So the biology grads among you will say deoxyribonucleic acid, but actually DNA stands for the National Association of Dyslexics. There's only one English word that ends in HT that doesn't have a G in front of it. And that word is yacht. So a beautiful word, comes from the German, Jacht. What book has its preface in the middle, its appendix at the front, and reaches a climax before you ever come to the plot? That's a kid's question. The answer is the dictionary, because you put the words in alphabetical order. Age appropriate, doesn't matter. Puzzles are for all ages. And got last couple to try out on you. Can you put these 8 words into 4 pairs that make good sense? Let's see. So we've got, give you a minute here. You can see there's an age and ice. I'll get you started. So we see ice age. And I bet you know the next one. You can see cell phone. And you can see first aid. And you can see sinkhole. You say, ha, you got this. Except that was only part A of this question. And that was the easy part. Okay, now do the same for these 8 words. Because you're muted and you're not going to say things out loud, you aren't going to get it right. But Rebecca, say things out loud and then you'll get it. And this is an example of homophones that we did. So I'll put these in a different order. So there's I, and there's sage, and there's self, and there's own, and there's fur, and stage. So I've just changed the order. Now say them out loud. I sage, self own, cell phone, first aid, and sinkhole. It's the same ones. What's unusual about this list of aviary inhabitants? Crane, crow, duck, goose, grouse, hawk, parrot, rail, snipe, and swallow? You say, yeah, they're all birds. Anything else unusual about them? Yep, they're all verbs. These are all things you can actually do. You can crane your neck, you can crow, you can duck, you can goose, you can grouse, you can hawk, you can parrot, you can rail, you can snipe, and you can swallow. So they're all verbs as well as bird names. And we'll just go a little bit to the end. I want to go tell you why should you solve puzzles? Because it involves brain functions, and anything that you spend your time using your brain for, concentration, memory, fine motor skills, visual observation, logic, numbers, vocabulary, visual spatial thinking, imagination, creativity, it's all enhanced by puzzling. So one final question, since we need a good ending question. Can you solve the problem here and figure out the answer, as all of the words listed below have an amazing thing in common? I'll let you think about that for a minute, and I'll tell you that I hope to have available in the coming year a book that is called The Whirl of Words, which is got word puzzles plus a lot of the history of the basic the big areas of puzzles, so anagrams and cryptograms and rebuses and words and numbers, and a little bit of the history of where all these things come from. So I'm working on that book now, The Whirl of Words. So this is a little taste of some of the puzzles that will be in there. The part that was at the first half of first hour of what we did today will be in the next book that I'm working on the beauty of the language. I don't have a title for that one yet.
You can solve the problems.
You got it. Excellent. Excellent. So has anybody other than Rebecca found the solution to this? You know, your smile, Rebecca, sort of lights up my computer screen. This is great. Okay, so would you like to, why don't you reveal the answer? Unmute yourself and reveal the answer to the rest.
So if you go down, starting in the left column, and the second column, and then the third column, the last part of the word is a word in of itself, and it makes a sentence. So can you solve the problem here?
Yep.
And figure out the answer as all of the words listed below have
And?
An amazing thing in common.
Exactly. So there were the instructions. It was also the answer. It's all there. And I did say it was the perfect ending puzzle, right? Because it's all about endings. So that brings us to the end, which is one of my favorite puns. When you write the words the end, that's what I call an optical conclusion. So thank you very much. If you want to see cryptic crosswords that I've created over the years, or listen to my episodes as the word guy on CBC, check out my website. You'll find things there. Thank you so much for your attention. By the way, the 3 provinces, Canadian provinces, are Nova Scotia, which becomes avocations, Ontario becomes oration, and the tough one, the variant spelling, is Alberta, which becomes rateable if you spell it with an E, the ability to rate things. What was the other question I asked you? Oh yes, the country, the 9-letter country name that you can divide into 3 words 2 different ways, and the answer is Singapore. Becomes sin and gap and or sing and and or. And for Rebecca, please go check out puzzlers.org. Pluralize, puzzlers.org. That's the website for the National Puzzlers League. That's where I live. We have, well, what do we say? It's important to have a place where you can spend time with people from your home planet. So it sounds like you are from my home planet.
Hey, Rebecca, it's Larry Bloom here. They should have had you working on that Enigma machine in the Second World War. You're amazing. And speaking of amazing, Jonathan, that was marvelous. It was not only fun, interesting, and informative, but it was a breath of fresh air in these craziest of times. That was fantastic, Jonathan. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who partook tonight. Now I'm thinking the word partook, you see, doing all the different. Oh my goodness. I actually got the Alberta one. I should have put it in the chat there, but I had to ask Alexa, so it doesn't count. But you said that was one of the cues that you should use. Anyway, Jonathan, thank you so much. David, did you want to say anything, or should we just say goodnight to everyone here?
Thank you very much, Jonathan. That was fantastic.
You're welcome. By the way, to find, when Alan Turing was trying to find people to work on the at Bletchley Park to decode or to break the Enigma machine, the audition or the entrance requirement was, could you solve the cryptic crossword puzzle in the Times?
Right.
Yeah. So being able to do cryptic crosswords and code breaking, it's all that same brain. And yeah, same brain.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jonathan. And thanks to everyone who came tonight.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.